The guilt complex of the American white man is so profound until when you begin to analyze the real condition of the black man in America.
There are moments in history when the voice rises above the noise, piercing through the illusions of equality to expose a harsh reality. Malcolm X was one of such voices. He did not merely speak of injustices. He warned of deep-rooted systems designed to keep black Americans in perpetual struggle. But what if his warnings were not just predictions, but a blueprint of what was to come? What if decades later, every single cautionary word he uttered had unfolded before our very eyes? At first glance, one might assume the fight for civil rights ended with legal victories, with the abolition of segregation and the passage of voting rights laws. Yet, the weight of oppression never truly lifted. It simply transformed, adapting to a world that wanted to believe in progress. Malcolm X saw this long before many others did. He foresaw a future where the very institutions designed to serve and protect would instead suppress and exploit, where black success would remain a threat, and where the media would continue to shape narratives that kept black Americans trapped in cycles of injustice. Today, as we examine the struggles of black Americans in the 21st century, we must ask ourselves, was Malcolm X right all along? Have we, despite decades of resistance, ended up exactly where he warned we would be? Let's find out. Malcolm X warned that black Americans were not just facing simple discrimination, but were victims of an entire system designed to keep them oppressed. He believed that the problem wasn't just about individuals being racist, but about the entire structure of American society being built to disadvantage black people. Today, systemic racism is still a harsh reality. The criminal justice system is one of the most obvious examples. Black Americans continue to be disproportionately affected by police violence, with high-profile cases such as the killing of George Floyd in 2020, Tyre Nichols in 2023, and the ongoing brutality faced by black communities in cities across the country. The disparities in sentencing between black and white individuals for similar crimes persist, showing that justice is not served equally. Racism also exists in education. Schools in black neighborhoods remain underfunded, and recent legislative measures in states like Florida and Texas have attempted to erase black history from curriculums, making it harder for students to learn about their heritage and the struggle their ancestors faced. The recent attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in universities further demonstrate that racial inequality is still deeply ingrained in the system. Housing discrimination continues to be a major issue. Black families still struggle to receive fair mortgage rates, and gentrifications in cities like Atlanta, Chicago, and New York has pushed black residents out of historically black neighborhoods, reducing access to community resources and generational wealth. Beyond these challenges, the rise of far-right movements and policies targeting black rights further show that systemic racism has not disappeared, it has only evolved. The rollback of affirmative action in 2023, for instance, has made it more difficult for black students across the United States to access higher education opportunities, reinforcing existing disparities. Meanwhile, hate crimes against black individuals have surged, with cases like racially motivated Buffalo supermarket shooting in 2022, highlighting the ongoing threat of white supremacist violence. Malcolm X did not trust the US government to protect black people. He believed that the government either could not or would not stop racial violence and discrimination. He saw that while laws were passed to give black people rights, those rights were not always enforced. The government's failure to protect black lives can be seen in multiple ways today. The response to the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020 highlighted this failure. While protests against police brutality were often met with military-style crackdowns, far-right extremists who attacked the US Capitol on January 6, 2021 were treated with far more leniency, proving that the justice system operates with racial bias. The pandemic also exposed major racial disparities in healthcare. Black Americans suffered disproportionately during the COVID-19 crisis due to inadequate access to healthcare, frontline job exposure, and pre-existing medical conditions linked to systemic inequality. The failure of the government agencies to address these disparities only reinforced Malcolm X's warning that black people cannot rely on the government for protection. Voter suppression has also intensified. Since 2020, several states have passed laws that make it harder for black Americans to vote, from stricter voter ID laws to the reduction of early voting days in predominantly black communities. These policies are designed to weaken black political power and prevent progress. Additionally, the government's slow response to crises that disproportionately affect black communities, such as the Jackson, Mississippi water crisis in 2020, shows that Malcolm X's fears were well-founded. When disasters strike black communities, the response is often delayed or inadequate, leaving residents to fend for themselves. Malcolm X emphasized that black Americans were kept in poverty on purpose. He believed that the economic oppression was one of the strongest tools used to control black people. Without economic power, black people would always be dependent on white society and unable to fight for their full rights. The racial wealth gap continues to widen. In 2023, reports show that black households still hold significantly less wealth than white households. Black Americans continue to struggle with their lower wages, limited job opportunities, and systemic barriers to financial security. The Supreme Court's decision to overturn affirmative action in college admissions in 2023 further threatens black economic mobility by limiting access to higher education opportunities. Workplace discrimination remains prevalent. Despite the push for more diversity, equity, and inclusion in corporate America following the George Floyd protest, many companies have quietly rolled back their commitments. Layoffs in 2023 disproportionately affected black employees, further proving that economic stability for black Americans is still uncertain. Home ownership rates among black Americans remain significantly lower than those of white Americans. Even in 2024, black home owners face discrimination in property appraisals, often receiving lower valuations for their homes compared to white homeowners in similar neighborhoods. This discrimination limits generational wealth accumulation and continues the cycle of economic oppression. Moreover, the economic impact of student debt crisis has disproportionately harmed black borrowers, many of whom were left out of the loan forgiveness programs or denied access to relief measures. Without targeted policies to address these issues, the economic divide will continue to grow.